English dictionary say that design originated in 1540 and it was a Latin word, and it was a verb. Later, through an Italian-French connection, designare became design and a noun. Well, what we can take from this definition is that it is a verb. That's a good point. Design, action inherent. But what we can't agree maybe is that it originated in 1540. Because we know that the history of design and mankind are entwined. It arose from the basic needs, necessities of daily life, a constant yearning to improve on situations. Sharpened tools, wheels, wheelbarrows, huts, settlements. Well, it was always an effort to think intelligently and execute artistically and always better an existing situation. So 30 plus years of professional practice, I haven't found a better definition for design rather than saying that design is which makes an existing situation better. We also know that if you look into design, a verb, its genes and the pair of chromosomes have two very distinct aspects to it. Intelligent thinking, which is actually about science, bringing in method and process, and art, bringing in beauty, making it a joy to use these designs. Art is very important because I would like you to take to the definition of art from Aristotle, which says, art is what liberates man from all evil and elevates him onto higher planes. So art and science, when they coexist, they can do wonders. Like, we have so many kind of instances in history wherein rulers have willfully used design, engaging with artists and craftsmen so that people can live in well-designed settlements with good order, bringing in efficiency, and with high moral values too. But then this is all kind of like utopia, as Thomas More says in 1740, this kind of settlements. Time will have to take its toll. The human brain, from the chimps, it doubled in size. From 1 pound, it is now 2.2 pounds. The ability to think, and maybe the heart shriveling. Somewhere the balance is lost. We see that times, the mills of time have turned. We saw people multiplied. The need multiplied. The need turning to greed. Necessities addressed rather in another big fashion, industrial revolution, mass production, new techniques, new materials. And then something really tricky happened, divisions. Classes, the rich and the poor, the elite and the underdogs. Even design stand divided today. Yes, complexity of all the situation, asking for so many design disciplines, like we have architecture, interior design, product design, furniture design, fashion design, and yes, rather than looking at all these disciplines as means to come together, we are very protective in our stance, taking or making very sure that the boundaries are kept. Why? I have always listened to this argument. I'm an architect and an interior designer, so worked in IIA and IIID. So I have always listened to this argument in particular. Architects, interior design. Architecture, interior design. Which is better, which is like second. I, for one, think that no architecture happens if there is no need for an interior. The real purpose or brief of architecture is to have an interior space which can take or be conducive for some functions. On the other hand, no interior can exist without that shell of the architecture, without that womb of architecture. So where is the conflict? Why are we not taking or looking at designs as a wholesome exercise? We need dialogues rather than monologues. Why are we in this present situation? Maybe it is because good design is good business. Good design is good business. This is where we have to press pause. Yes, design has its business sides, but design is always related to the primary signs and need for a shelter, and it is a service. It is primarily a service to take care of people, and in between, we have to keep good practices, good business practices, to make sure that it happens beautifully. However, sometimes, nowadays, design becomes mere business. So this is where we have to think of some relevant way of redefining design for today's times, because today's times are different. We need such kind of responses. Formal responses to strategic questions. Today is a time when we need to, or we are looking at so many questions. Like what? The blue marble planet Earth, for one. The only planet known to house harbor life. It is now facing so many difficulties, like even extinction soon if global warming, climate change, and all that is not contained. Do you know that BBC reports 2018 as a year which widened gaps between people like never before? 26 people of world's richest people own equivalent to 50% of the bottom half of the entire world's population. 26 equal to 50% of the bottom half. In another way, or if you look at the entire scenario, they again say 14% of the entire world's population holds 86% of the entire, equivalent to 86% equivalent of the entire wealth of the rest of the population. That is a division. That is not the grid from where man has come. You have to look at this redwood forest, which is the oldest forest in the world in California, which stands forest fire, earthquakes, whatnot. The entire system of these trees, which are natural skyscrapers which go up to 130 meters tall, they are all connected by the roots. Every young tree, every old tree, it's a connection of grids by roots. People, social animals, we are also supposed to be connected. We are also supposed to address all these questions of life together. But we see that it is not happening. 2018, again, the division is increasing. What are the other strategic questions? America, US, supposed to be the most powerful country in the world. Today, their best architecture is about putting a wall to segregate or divide two races. And for that, the entire country has faced the longest shutdown in the history. Forget about America. India, a country where 300 million people, that is like 25% of our population, doesn't earn more than 50 rupees per day. Can you imagine that? Not earning even 50 rupees per day. We built up, or we now have, the tallest statue in the world for 30 billion. And then what is interesting is that so many states are bidding for taller statues. Are taller statues an index of taller standards of civilization or well-being? I doubt. Anyway, probably the ultimate question might be that image of the small boy lying face down on a beach, not knowing what he died for, which war, and we also don't know why. So this is the kind of questions today which are being posed to us. And we need to give formal responses as designers, and yes, we can. Because what we think is what stands. We know that architecture is the matrix of civilization. What we build as exterior or interior spaces are that which creates the impression and influences people to think in the right direction, and also after generations for people to judge what kind of a civilization we were. Let me kind of share two stories, interesting ones. Probably we will be able to understand the dilemma better. Two boys passing out from an interior design, architecture college in Bombay, got together to put up a practice. They were eager, ambitious, so very morally correct, full of good values and good ambition, very excited. They start their practice. Beginning is always a struggle. And then their first client was a lady, a European lady. I think she was from Spain. And she came to their office and asked for a house. The first residential project, they were excited, and 1 week later, they show her a design. Not good. I want to have something like my house in Spain. Again, the next, sitting. These boys try to kind of make it blend with Indian architecture and Spain, and then come up with another novel, very good idea. No. I want to have this house. She produces a picture. This house, which is my house in Spain, in India. And there, one of the boys left. He said, no, I won't do it probably. The other boy took it ahead. He gave her exactly what she needed. And this story, which was recited to all of the Triple ID crowd in Indore, was from Hafiz Contractor. He was that boy who took it ahead. And he continued that, I will do a headstand, handstand, whatever. And recited again another incident when a client asked him to build a $1 billion building somewhere. And he was having only 2-3 days before the client was leaving the country. And he produced 30-odd designs and displayed all those designs in the halls of an airport lounge, and told the client, pick up whatever you want. The client was very happy. He shortlisted 5 and finalized on the one, and the assignment was his. That is one strategy. A very right one, maybe. Okay, now let me talk to you about another incident. A third-year-old architecture student in US, she suddenly found that there was a competition happening for the Vietnam Memorial, wherein top architects of US, because Vietnam is so very emotionally and, very important for Americans, and she decided to give an entry, a third-year student of architecture. And her entry was selected as one of the best amongst the first 3. But then there was a huge hue and cry. No, this is not possible. Top architectural names and firms cannot handle it, and even US people cannot handle it. So there were rounds and rounds of discussion, years of discussion. After 2 years, this girl was called and said, if you can change the design slightly and work with another, the second runner, probably then we can look at your design. Imagine a student, what kind of an opening it is, what kind of an advertisement it is. She said no, and she went. Later, again, after so many kind of ways to tackle this situation, she was called again and she was asked to let them put a flag on her design according to somebody else's design which we were discussing. She said, that design is good. My design is also good. So let them both be what they are. If you want to use my design, it will be that design only. It is not because I don't value it, but this is it. That is conviction. There is one way to practice it. The other thing is reality, practicality. And then there are, even when I said 2 stories, there could be 2 more stories to this. What happened to the other guy who wanted to start that office in the first place? What is he doing now? Probably he didn't do anything. Or somewhere, as an anonymous architect, he is also making a living. And then the 4th story is about people who are caught in between these decisions. What we think is what we are going to make stand, and that is going to have a say. All this is philosophy. Design should work. We have to be practical. And what is today's philosophy? We cannot let it go like that, because designers are primarily from the creed of the creator itself, is what we believe. Albert Einstein says that we have built a beautiful ship with all the comforts, but the only thing we don't have, what is going wrong, is that we don't have a compass and we don't know where we are going. Martin Luther King said, we have guided missiles but misguided men. Dalai Lama says now that we have wider freeways but narrower perspectives, taller buildings but shorter tempers and moral values. Do we have a take on this? Can we do something about it? It's for life. We need to have something practically coming out of it, and I believe so. Because design, for me, is the ultimate instrument of change. Don't you believe? You can go into a room and the wrong color can give you a headache. You can set the study table of a young kid by a window, giving an opening onto the ground, some trees, some flower. You are shaping that kid, and maybe all the kids when we are doing this, when we are setting up studies, to become nature-friendly, people who are seasoned to see light, rain, seasons. He becomes a person with good feelings, a good citizen, and when we do it, we get a series of citizens, and that's how we create civilization. Winston Churchill said, we first shape our spaces, and then those spaces shape our people, and those people decide our destinies. So if you take it, A is equal to B is equal to C, there is A is equal to, therefore A is equal to C, then we are saying that we don't design just buildings and spaces and interiors, we design destinies. And that is why what we think and what we execute from what our thinking matters. People ignore design, which ignore people. Design is supposed to be people-centric. Everybody is a natural designer. At some point of time, we took that from them to a large extent. And now they are standing without resources, without space, without any idea of what to do. That is almost 86% of the population of this world. And we are catering to the elite. At some point of time, we have to know that man is a social animal, but the bearing capacity of the sociality also will have a snapping point. I want to tell you that we know what happened in Germany. People taking over rather ruthlessly. And we are always so very critical about Hitler. Can I tell you that Hitler was a young boy once who wanted to do a course in arts and design. He was so poor, he was going across colleges for a seat. And that was on one day afternoon when he was dejected for the umpteenth time, sitting in a square, listening to a nationalist speech. He decided enough is enough, and the Germans will have to have the right. So everybody acts out of emotions. Survival of the fittest is the Darwin theory. So we also need to keep this in mind when we design. We need to make this movement inclusive. We need to care for people alike. Particularly India 2020, superpower, 1.4 billion people. 1.4 billion people, do you know how many designers we have? We have just 3 lakhs of designers. If you take architecture, interior design, product design, everything together, we have just 3 lakh designers. And we think that we are fine. We have a good say and we have a good perspective about what's going to happen, about taking this country to the future. But no. The majority of the design in this country is happening because of the housewives, for one. And when I say housewives, let me tell you, it is not the wives of Shah Rukh Khan or somebody else, all these celebrity Hollywood wives who figure in the web also as the best interior designers and architects of India. I'm talking about those housewives of a slum dweller, which Brinda Somaya once said, if you go into a slum and see how a wife, a mother has set everything into the hollowness of a pipe or a small hut, no designer can beat them. So design is a natural instinct. Everybody is a designer. We need to empower people. We need to reach out to them. We need to take carpenters, masons, housewives, everybody, and try to think of how to improve, how to empower them to have their own ways on putting up their own homes. We have to think of practicing interior design or architecture in alternate ways. It needn't be always comprehensive. Why can't we go to the panchayats and villages set camps, like medical camps, they do. So many things can be done. Yes, design will ignore, people will ignore design, which ignore people, and soon, if we don't do something, things might get out of hand, is also what history tells us. I have complicated the whole thing enough, but the underlying point is design is very simple, and we have to keep it simple even while addressing the complexities. And when we do our part of the job in the best possible way, listening to our conscience, which is actually a silent listening, and then doing it morally. It's a silent way of doing it. This brand of design, or designers who believe in design democracy, let's say, call it design democracy, will have a say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, may I request you to please stay on stage? How many of you really thought that was superbly eye-opening? Come on. Give her a huge, huge round of applause. I heard you say at that point in time that, the MC said this, but I'm not joking. I was standing there listening to your talk and I had goosebumps because, how many of you really felt superbly connected to every single point she made? Yeah, that's how powerful the talk was. And we're so blessed to have her here with us today. You should be so grateful that she's here and speaking with you. I'm going to request our President IIID, Shri Pratap Jadhav ji, and our Chairperson IIID Amravati, Architect Pavan Suradevara, to please come up on stage and felicitate ma'am. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. It was not just for designers and architects. It was for human beings because it truly did touch the spirit. Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it nice and loud for Ms. Jabin Zacharias. Wow. Thank you very much, ma'am, once again. Okay. How many of you realize that you're part of history and you're feeling really good about, being part of making history? How many of you realize that? You don't realize that yet? This is the first ever Amravati Design Festival happening right here in Andhra Pradesh. You are part of making history. Now, how many of you feel good about it? Yeah. Okay, still very few people who are feeling good about it. I do ask a lot of questions. You know why I ask a lot of questions? Because it keeps us in interactive mode. It keeps us engaged, right? Otherwise, by the time I finish talking about the next bit, I'll hear some snores. That's why I keep asking questions. I'm very sure that talk didn't let you even wink. But I can, no? Sometimes I don't have that ability that she had to kind of hold you. Well, let's move on right now. And we are moving on this morning with our next speaker for the day. And I'm going to request Suhita to please introduce our next speaker for the day. Thank you very much, Suhita.
Thank you, Pallavi.
Yes, let's hear it for her. अगर ताली बजानी ही है, तो दिल खोल के बजाइएगा, please. आधी अधूरी ताली नहीं बजाना. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and privilege for me to introduce our next speaker, who has also curated one of the workshops spanning roofs without steel for the students, Professor Architect Surya Kakani today. Professor Surya Kakani completed his architecture from School of Architecture, Vallabh Vidyanagar, and Masters in Architecture from the University of California, Los Angeles. Traveling extensively across Pan-Asia, Mexico, America, Europe and China to explore the relationships between materials, structure, culture, space and sustainability. He has been a visiting faculty, a critic at various institutes, and considers these interactions as extremely important in forming the course of the practice at Kakani Associates, where the endeavor is on giving meaning to working in the present-day context of resources and their appropriate use. His studio reflects this holistic framework to achieve economy of resources through material innovation and skill transferability through a design process. The larger design strategy focused on making spaces flexibly multifunctional for ever-changing urban demands, an important contemporary challenge in the mainstreaming and alternative building type. These concerns reflect in the practice's works. In April 2017, he was appointed as Dean Faculty of Architecture at CEP University, recognizing his contribution to architecture, practice, and continued collaboration with academics. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our next speaker, Professor Architect Surya Kakani.
Hi, a very good morning to you all. I must really appreciate this initiative. Closer. This initiative that Triple ID and through Pawan and then through Sudhir, this whole exercise of connecting with the students, which I think is a very important initiative in a industry-oriented event. Somewhat yesterday, Peter Rich expressed this kind of a connect with community, and Himanshu also talked about how the power of the eye has become so testimonial to the kind of works that we are producing today. So in that context, I'd like to quote Ioannis Pallasma, who very eloquently puts it, and I'll read it out to you a bit. As a consequence of the power of the eye over the other sensory realms, architecture has been transformed into an art form of the instant visual image. instead of creating existential microcosms, embodied representations of the world, contemporary architecture projects retinal images for the purpose of immediate persuasion. And it is somehow has been some kind of a guiding, I would say, a thought around which some of our works could be out like that, and the inside they're soft. Can we explore construction methodologies that allow more social equity? Can we use materials that have less embodied energy? So these were questions that we started looking at, and then through the practice we've been trying to find ways and means and methods that allow us to create build spaces that address our particular realities. And these are our particular realities of our space, which is glare, heat, humidity. We have problems of ventilation. We have cool nights. Our architecture has always had courts, verandas, and terraces, which were active spaces. We have always used color. We have peculiar. The computers potentially, but they couldn't afford the air conditioning and other kinds of paraphernalia that was required to keep them working. So there was this institution which asked us to make a computer center, which is a large campus of various schools in that, and they said that they'll put the computers in one building and that the other schools will come in and connect.